Hey friends, Journal Girl here, aka Sammy, and today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, specifically how it affects people with mental and physical illness or disabilities. If that's not your jam, I'll be doing some art stuff tomorrow, but I do feel like this is something that even people who do art have to deal with. So stick around for that, and we'll get started right now. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to actually read from stuff. Okay, so according to Wikipedia, imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, accomplishments, and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Now, people who have imposter syndrome sometimes put it up to luck, deceiving others, and it is actually happens in personal interrelationships as well. So this is like thinking that, okay, personal story. So with me and my art, I don't think I'm that good. I feel like I have this imposter syndrome that somehow people have figured out that it is good looking. And so I get very nervous when I post anything on Instagram or Facebook or, anywhere, or do a video about me doing art, because I feel like I am a fraud, as in this. Or actually, no, I would just say I doubt my skills or talents. And I know that's not true. Logically, I know that's not true. Logically, I know that I have some talent, obviously. But emotionally, I still feel like I don't. And I've been doing art for over 15 years, so I have some skill and talent, but I don't know. I think a lot of people who do art have that imposter syndrome going on as well, that they doubt how good their art is. And I've had friends who are exactly the same way, that I have to remind are actually really good at art and that they shouldn't be judging themselves. But it's always easier to give others advice than yourself. There is something about this, though, that I want to kind of focus on. So imposter syndrome when it comes to mental illness. So it says certain individuals may see themselves as less ill, like less depressed, less anxious than their peers or other mentally ill people, citing their lack of severe symptoms as an indication of no or a minor underlying issue. People with this form do not seek help for their issues, seeing their problems as not worthy of psychiatric attention. For me, I've had depression most of my life, anxiety most of my life, and according to my friend that was over this weekend, who I've known since high school, ADHD most of my life. And I never went to a psychiatrist. I sometimes went to a therapist once in a while, but never a psychiatrist. Never really got much in terms of medications or anything like that. I didn't go until, I want to say 3 years ago, when I realized that I really needed to get some help. I'd been inpatient in 2015, and I knew that something else needed to be done. So I went to a psychiatrist, same person I see today. She's very lovely and very smart, and I've learned so much about who I am, what I'm dealing with, medications that can help, medications that don't help, interactions that, people aren't aware of, like the time I almost got serotonin syndrome. Well, I started getting it. So, it's very beneficial for me. And as a psychiatrist, she was able to get me in to get TMS, which is what is that? Whatever. Anyway, I can't remember what it stands for, but basically what it is they put this helmet on you, and here's a picture of me in the helmet, and they use kind of like the magnets from like an MRI to target certain positions in your brain that deal with anxiety, depression. You can do weight loss, ADHD, all of that. Now, I just realized I have a iPad in front of me and I can look things up. Okay. transcranial magnetic stimulation. That's what it stands for. And it really, really was beneficial to me. I did all 36 sessions of it before work, and it was really beneficial. It does hurt a little bit, but I was able to get some relief from what I was dealing with. So I still see her today. I'm going to see her in a couple days, and I find it very valuable because she doesn't do therapy, but I can talk to her about things that are going on because I do have a therapist, and get her advice because she can diagnose mental disorders. So that's kind of my story about how it took me until I was in my mid-30s to go see a psychiatrist because I didn't think that my symptoms were bad enough to need to see one. So I actually asked a friend of mine about this, and she gave me a lot of really interesting stories about imposter syndrome, and it goes past, mental illness and all of that. So with imposter syndrome, she talked about how she joined a writing group and she didn't feel like her writing was as good as theirs. So she stopped writing, but had a friend who pestered her and believed in her and said that you should be doing this, you should be writing, and now she's been published in 2 anthologies. Let's see. And then she also takes care of her mom, who has illnesses that require help. And she always feels like she's doing a terrible job. And I can relate to that because I always felt like before my father died that I was doing a terrible job taking care of him. But he reminded me that I wasn't. So, sometimes we need somebody to say that. She says, we're our own worst critics. It's a constant struggle, but one manifests as guilt every time something happens. And her mom goes back to the hospital. Now, when it comes to people who have disabilities, like myself, I found something that was really interesting. Let's see if my bookmark loads, because sometimes it takes a while to get them to load from my iPad. Okay, here we go. Okay. Now, I read this, and so this is an article on Junkie called The Bizarre Prevalence of Invisible Illness Imposter Syndrome. And she quotes her friend in the very beginning, and it hit me like right in the heart. It says, sometimes I wonder if maybe the aches and pains I have every day are actually really normal and everyone's just tougher at dealing with it than I am. And other times I wonder if there's actually nothing wrong with me and I'm just faking being sick. Now, raise your hand if you've thought, oh, my symptoms aren't that bad, or I must just be a wimp because I feel this pain. Everyone complains about back pain or whatever when they get older. So why, what's wrong with me that I can't really deal with it? And it just this hit me so hard. So she talks about this, which I think is really interesting. Dynamic disability is a term that means a disability that changes in nature from day to day. For example, I identify as having a dynamic disability because some days I am completely mobile and can walk unassisted, but other days I am immobile and either cannot walk or need to use a mobility aid. My disability looks totally different from one day to the next. And that often causes friction with family members or friends because they see you getting up and walking around and doing a bunch of stuff, and then they also see you on some days not able to do anything. For example, I have a handicap placard, but I still don't feel like I am disabled enough to do that, but my doctor thinks I am. And I have a cane that I use sometimes, and I don't use it as much as I should because I feel like people will think I'm faking it or something like that. It's difficult to kind of deal with. So I found another article on Thrive Global that I think is really interesting, and I will link these articles below for you guys. I know this is a little bit of a longer video. But she has 8 ways your imposter syndrome shows up when you have a chronic illness. One is feeling like a fraud in your own body, refusing your own success, doubting your symptoms or disability, medical gaslighting, being a perfectionist, seeing help as a sign of weakness, ableism, and comparison with others. So feeling like a fraud in your own body goes back to that dynamic illness that we talked about, as well as the doubt. Now, medical gaslighting is when you have spent years suffering with symptoms and your doctor keeps telling you it's all in your head, you're just depressed, or they just kind of like blow you off. And I've had doctors like that. It took a few years for me to get diagnosed with what I got diagnosed with, as illnesses that are more subjective than objective, which means the illness is described by the symptoms, and they go through the lack of other symptoms, and that's how they come at the objective diagnosis. And then here's a big one that I'm sure a lot of people deal with is asking for help as a sign of weakness. I don't want people to know what I can't do because I am afraid of their judgment. So I do a lot of stuff that often puts me in bed the next day, and it's because I want to hide that from people. Like, we all wear a mask of being happy and looking like we're fine because we don't want that judgment of people being like, oh, she's faking it. Oh, he's not doing, what he should. They're saying that they can't, get out of bed today, but yesterday they were fine. So it just, doesn't serve you very well. And the best thing I can say is one, it's not a competition. We can't compare one person's disability or illness to another. It's not a competition. It's not a comparison. It's subjective and objective with your healthcare team. The other thing I can say is this as well is share your art, share your creative passions. Don't give a damn what other people are going to think, because you don't know who you're going to inspire. And that is the story of my life. So anyway, this episode was a little bit longer. I apologize for that, but this is this topic that I would love to do a deep dive into in a longer video. So let me know if you'd want to hear anything more about imposter syndrome as it applies to creative people, mental illness, or physical illness. As always, I love your comments and try to respond to them as best I can. So make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will see you tomorrow with an art supply demonstration. Anyway, if your day's going good today, I am so happy, and I hope that tomorrow is just as good as today. And if your day is going terrible and you feel awful, I hope that this kind of distracted you for a little while and that tomorrow is better. Thanks, guys. Bye.